And we are on our 10th story in A Story a Day Till Christmas. And this one is called Christmas Among the Animals. Mary held her newborn baby in her arms. She was happy but troubled too. It was cold in the stable, and there was a nasty draft. She pressed her little son against her heart and wished that her love could warm his cold little body. Worried, she glanced at the big holes in the roof. Through the largest of these, a beautiful flickering star looked down. The star which later was to show the way to the shepherds and the three magi, but Mary did not know about this yet. She was a mother, worried about her little baby and waiting for Joseph, who had gone to borrow some fire. Tenderly cradling her little son in her arms, she looked around at the animals whose home she shared: an ox, a mule, a horse, a cow, and a goat. It was obvious that the animals regarded her as an intruder, except perhaps for the ox. He looked friendly, sometimes glancing behind him to the corner where his sister the cow was giving birth to a little calf. Mary was looking for a tiny place in which to put her son to sleep, but all she saw was a hard, rough ground, the heavy beams and dark corners full of spider webs. Maybe she could use the animal's manger. She filled it with some hay and laid down her baby. Then she tore off part of her dress to cover him and sat down quietly beside him. The animals were watching this for some time, and the goat had worked herself into a rage. Loudly bleating, she tried to set the others against the human beings. Such manners! Intruding upon their privacy and taking their manger and their food too. Pretty soon the horse and the mule began to agree with the goat. They pounded the floor with their hooves and cast mean looks at the little group of humans. Mary noticed it and felt the animals were justified. She got up and began to gather for them the hay which lay all over the stable floor. It was a difficult task, but she felt it was her duty, and finally she had assembled the whole lot of it. But the big hungry horse thought that it wasn't enough. Full of contempt, he stamped his hooves on the heap of hay, snorted indignantly, and tossed his mane in anger. What he wanted was that delicious bit of hay right under the little boy in the manger. He pushed the mule out of his way and began to nibble greedily. Poor Mary was desperate. She took her baby in her arms again and began to pray. Suddenly she heard a sound on the roof, and when she looked up, lo, there was a beautiful angel looking down at her through the biggest hole in the roof. He addressed the horse: "You greedy, intolerant animal! Henceforth you and your offspring shall serve and carry human beings. You are larger and more powerful than they are, but you will be their humble servant." And so it came to pass. Meanwhile, the ox felt sorry for Mary and her infant and wanted to make up for what his friend had done. With his heavy hooves he scraped some hay together for a bed and blew his warm breath comfortingly over the cold little baby. He had whispered in Mary's ear that his sister the cow wished to give her little calf to her son for a playmate. Oh, how grateful was Mary! She looked up, and lo, there was the angel again, this time peering at the ox through the biggest hole in the roof. "Henceforth," he said, "you and your sister shall eat in peace, and even digest your food 4 times. And your sister shall have a calf each year and always have plenty of milk." And so it came to pass. The mule had listened to all these prophecies, but didn't know whether to believe them or not. It was all rather silly, he thought. He had his own opinion and very bad manners. Suddenly he began to bray stupidly. When Mary was thanking the ox for his kindness, he snatched the hay away from under the baby and began to eat rapidly, while moving his long ears up and down. But before Mary could do anything to prevent him, lo, There was the angel shaking a menacing finger at the mule through the biggest hole in the roof. "Mule," he said, "just for this, you and your kind will never have any babies from this day." And so it came to pass. One would think that this time the goat might have learned her lesson and behaved herself. But no, she was stupid and brazen. Still bleating loudly, she rushed through the stable, kicking up her heels and making a fool of herself. The little boy began to cry, and Mary didn't know what to do next. And when she looked up at the star shining through the roof, lo, there was the angel shaking his head through the biggest hole. To this day the goat and her offspring have kept that silly laugh, and their milk has lost its good flavor, so that people don't like to drink it. And so it came to pass. At long last peace returned to the stable, wonderful, comforting peace. Joseph returned and brought some fire. The animals stood in awe, and a great and heavenly light shone through the biggest hole in the roof. The little infant fell into an untroubled sleep, and Mary folded her hands in prayer. This is what happened during the holy night. At least many people believe it, or at least that is what people in Holland tell one another.